Typically, we have you coming in without audio, but today we are trying something a little bit different. So you are coming in with audio capabilities. So if you can just quickly put yourself on mute, that would be appreciated. And we're going to get started here in just a few minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Well, Steve, it is 10. You want to wait a few more minutes or would you like to get started?
I'll follow your lead, Dana. Whatever you like. I'm ready if you are.
Okay. Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? So again, good morning, everyone. I hope your Wednesday is off to a great start. This is Dana Myers. I am with Southeast Community College. And again, I just want to thank all of you for joining us today for getting a grip on overwhelming projects. During this webinar, we will focus on the importance of stopping, taking a deep breath, and utilizing a tool that will help you plan and succeed as you continue to take on existing and new challenges. Before we begin, though, I just want to mention that you are joining this without video, but you are, your audio has been, I guess you're joining with audio. It's a better way to say it. So you guys have control over your mute and unmute right now. Our hope is to make this an interactive session. So Steve will have some prompts throughout the webinar, asking you to join verbally or submit questions. So keep that in mind. So if you can quickly just take a quick second and make sure you are on mute. You have control over that. So if you can find that capability and put yourself on mute, that would be much appreciated. That way we can focus on Steve. I hear a little bit of some background noise. So if you guys could just double check that for me and please place yourself on mute, that would be awesome. So we will also have a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. If you guys want to just submit all of your questions through the Zoom Q&A feature at the end of the presentation, I will go through those and Steve will answer those during the time that we have allowed for today. So there's a lot of opportunities, hopefully, for some interactions and getting some questions answered for you. So with all of that being said, I'd like to introduce Steve. Steve Slate has more than 30 years of project experience.
Andy.
Pardon me?
Yeah, I met him out there.
So again, real quick, if we could just take a quick second and make sure we're on mute, that would be fantastic. Just a little bit of background.
Sorry about that, Dana. I'm going to manually mute anyone who hasn't muted themselves, and they won't be able to participate.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So Steve has more than 30 years of project experience and has taught for more than 5 years at the university level. Work experience includes several years at Hewlett-Packard Company, as well as work with various nonprofits. He now owns Witerations LLC that helps clients not just think outside of the box, but to literally outwit the box. Steve is a certified project management professional, a certified Scrum Master, and holds a bachelor's and master's degree from Colorado Christian University. And with that, Steve, I'm going to turn everything over to you.
Thank you so much, Dana. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate all of you who are taking some time today to tune in and be a part of this. And hopefully at the end of the session, you'll have a little bit more tools, more ideas, more ways to to manage the things that are coming at you every day. So projects are a big deal. Companies are going to do projects. There is no question that what we're dealing with right now is going to bring on a new series of projects for companies, for people. So that might be why you're here, because things are going to change. We don't know how, hopefully not too dramatically, but we know that there will be change. Real quick, is my presentation screen showing up okay? Dana, is that the getting a grip screen showing up okay for everyone? Can you tell?
I can see it fine.
Yeah, it looks good.
All right, that's great. Thank you, guys. So we'll get going here, and if you have any questions, like Dana said, pop them up in Q&A, and we'll do it. We'll get going. Dana did just such a fabulous job. I'm not sure that she was talking about me in the introduction, but hopefully that was me. It sounded really good. Husband, father of two. We have a dog named Fred that I did not allow in the room. He was here earlier today, but I had to kick him out. But as Dana said, I do some online work for Colorado Christian, and then also do mostly in-seat at Southeast Community. So it is great to have you guys with us today. We're going to do just a bit of housekeeping. Dana said that, as she mentioned, there's going to be some interactive stuff happening here today. And so to keep it interactive, that obviously creates some challenges. So I'm putting these guys, putting them to the test today to see how we can do this. So what I'm going to ask you to do is a couple of you to jump in and introduce yourselves. So you would be unmuting yourself and just introduce yourself. And to get on the air, the reason I'm asking that is we're going to ask you about some projects that you're involved in. So I'm hoping that the 2 or 3, 4 or 5 of you might jump in and give a quick 30-second, 40-second rundown of who you are, what are some of the projects that are overwhelming that you're involved in. But to get on the air, I think we're going to use this, Dana, to raise your hand first. And we'll have people raise their hand, and then Dana will call on them. And I think that's the way that we're going to work this. If not, we'll figure it out as we go. But we would like you to raise your hand. If you hover over the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see something that pops up that looks like what's the little black area on the bottom of the presentation screen, where you can click and on the participants piece, click on participants, and there you can raise your hand. There will also be a time that we're going to use chat. And so I'm seeing from Laura that she can only see me. The screenshot is tiny. Let me see if there is something I can do to make the screen bigger here.
Now that's just a user interface option within Zoom.
Okay.
So she'll have to experiment with the small window and the toggle swap in the upper right-hand corner. So she'll have to get that on her side.
Okay, Laura, hopefully that helps. That you might have to just experiment a little bit with the various settings. There are some things on the top right side with some of the views. So hopefully that's okay. All right, thank you. So let's do real quick. I want to make sure everybody knows how to use chat and can show it. I assume chat is chat set up so that everybody can see it. I think it is. Let's go ahead and what I'd like you to do real quick, just so you can get familiar with the chat, is just say, hello, Dana. Type in chat, hello, Dana, and let's just make sure that's working. Hello, Dana. Hello, Dana. Excellent. Okay, good deal. All right. So we're going to use chat. That's a lot of hello, Danas. Dana, you can address each one of them individually.
Hello, everyone.
Perfect. All right. You guys have it down. So good deal. So we're going to use that in just a little bit as well as we go through this. All right. So what I would like is for 4 or 5 of you to share just a real quick blurb. Where you work is optional. First name is fine. Where you work is optional. And an overwhelming project you're working on or will be soon. This can be at home. This can be at the office. It can be maybe you're working for a charity or something like that. What is an overwhelming project that you have to work on right now? Maybe just a 30.
Your meeting ID followed by pound.
All right. Anybody want to pop up their hand and share with us real quick?
We do have Terry
Okay.
Tilson, who would like to share.
All right, Terry, go ahead.
Morning. My name is Terry Tolson. I live in Plattsburgh, Nebraska. I'm a former Navy Master Training Specialist.
Thank you.
My experience has been, training through, Navy Marines and SEALs in the United States Navy. And my final assignment was to be the instructor at the United States Naval Academy, where I retired. My emphasis is on the veterans of foreign wars and trying to work several different projects in order to work on our membership issues, taking care of our veterans, and extending our leadership skills to the community at large. A lot of folks see it as an untapped resource. And right now, the biggest project we have going is to the communication portion of this thing. It's very difficult because half of my folks are elderly, and many of those are computer savvy, but a greater majority of them think the internet is a fad and it will one day go away. So that's where I'm at right now. So anything you could help us with on the project would be greatly appreciated.
Excellent, Terry. Thank you. After that, I think I might step down and let you teach the remainder of the class, Terry. That was great. Thank you for your service, sir. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else want to share an overwhelming project that you're dealing with?
We have Jeff Cosgrove.
Yeah, Jeff, go ahead.
This is Jeff Cosgrove. I'm with Lincoln Electric System. I'm a safety specialist working at home for the last 8 weeks. So, we have big, large group safety meetings. So a lot of planning on that, how we're going to do that through videos, Skype, just different Zoom, whatever we can do that way. So, and other things that we have coming up where we're in groups and just try to keep our social distancing with the linemen and,
Sure.
anything with safety meetings and trainings that way. So.
Okay. All right. So do you have a specific project that you're dealing with, or is it just the overall everyday stuff that you're dealing with?
Couple of everyday things. Luckily, we haven't had a lot of incidents going on, that way. Everybody's working pretty safe. So I'm going to say right now it's going to be orientations. And right now I'm working on transitioning. A lot of people have been working from home like me for the last 8 weeks. They're going to come back to the office, and we just want to make sure they're focused, on the safety, what they need to be focusing on when they get back in the office. So.
Okay, so kind of a safety project, how to
Yes.
deal with it. Okay, good.
Right.
Good. All right, good. All right, 1 or 2 others. Anybody else?
Yeah, we have Jennifer Wilson.
Okay, Jennifer, go ahead.
Jennifer, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
I hear you, Jennifer. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Jennifer Wilson, also from Lincoln Electric System. I won't give what the project is, but I am on month 11 of a 12-week project.
I don't laugh at you. I laugh with you, Jennifer.
I can't seem to get it wrapped up. I mean, it's live, but we still have outstanding issues that we can't call it complete. So highly frustrating. We're on our 4th consultant because the other 3 have left the company. So we don't have that previous knowledge. It's been challenging.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how to finally just wrap it up because we are literally at their mercy.
I hear you. Okay. Yeah, I apologize. I shouldn't have laughed like that.
No, I get it. It's funny when I say it too, because it's like you have to think about it for a second. That literally is supposed to take 3 months, and it's now going to probably take an entire year.
I have a jacket from Hewlett Packard days that says Project 18 on it. The 18 stood for 18 months because it was a large project. And the last I heard, 10 years later, it was still working. So a working project. So yeah. I understand your pain, Jennifer. Absolutely. All right. Anybody else? One more, and then we'll move on. Is that it, Dana? Do we have anybody else, Dana?
Oh, looks like we have a couple people who are trying this chime in, but go ahead and speak up if we've got one or two. There's a Fred Rummery's got his hand up, and Paul Tran. Either of you
Okay,
guys.
Fred, then Paul.
This is Frederick Rummery.
Okay, Fred, go ahead.
So I also an employee of Lincoln Electric System. I'm a project coordinator, so that is my day in and day out is projects, whether they're large or small, capital or maintenance. We see them all. So that's my biggest thing, not necessarily a specific project, but the toughest ones seem to be the ones with multiple coordinations, whether it be developers, working with the city, different powers to be that all play in, and everyone has different wishes. So getting those all to come together for a common goal is oftentimes the biggest issue that we find.
Yes. Okay, good. All right, one more. And was it Paul?
Yep. Paul Tran. I work for Lincoln Surgical Hospital. One of the big projects that I'm working on right now is introducing a whole new line of service for our facility to something that we haven't performed cases for in the past.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. So it sounds like we've got a huge variety of projects. We've got some that we maybe don't even know for sure are a project. But we're going to we're going to define a project real quick here in just a little bit. And so we'll just keep rolling here. Thank you for your participation and help. So my wife and I live in an old farmhouse just outside Lincoln. It was built in 1912. I don't know if you can see behind me. It's got the picture rail, all that stuff, the big old doors and stuff. Last spring, my wife decided, let's do a project and paint the house. Her plan, take a couple weekends, knock it out. Well, guess what? Just like Jennifer's project, we're still working on it. So we've got most of it knocked out. But here's what happens when you underestimate. Hopefully you can see the picture of a half-painted house. Thankfully, we're past that stage, but it's not as bad as the picture looks. We're just working on the porch part now. So after a significant amount of time and research, a lot of planning, a lot of work went into figuring out how we were going to do this. We ended up renting a lift. Cost a little bit more money, but we ended up renting a lift. We had some help from our kids. We were able to utilize that, and we were able to get the top of the house painted just like that. And then us old folks, my wife and I, were able to knock out the rest of it after they had left for the time that they were here. So what I'm going to do, this is a little bit of the, it's easy to miscalculate. It's easy to underestimate what a project's going to take. As a matter of fact, most projects are underestimated. And it's so easy to do that. So what I'm going to do, this is going to get really messy, but we're going to try it anyway. And Luke and Dana from Southeast, I apologize to you guys, but we're going to give this a try. So we're going to take a math test all together. And this is, again, an illustration of how easy it is to miscalculate. So I'm going to ask Dana and Luke to unmute all the lines in just a second, or unmute yourselves. It might be that you have to unmute yourself. But in a second, we're going to ask you to unmute, and I'm going to take you through a series of numbers that I'd like for you to add together out loud. Never tried this on Zoom, tried this live, and it usually works pretty well with the live class. Let's go ahead and let's do this. So what I'm going to do is take you through these numbers, 1,000, 1,040. You're going to add them up as we go. So I'm back at the beginning. So everybody unmute yourselves really quick. And I want everybody to add together these two numbers. So let's start at 1,000. Everybody say it.
1,040.
40.
Okay, good. Okay, so we're going to do that. Everybody we're going to go through this whole thing and try it. So that's exactly what we want. Everybody just yell it out, be proud, and let's see where we get here. So all right, here we go. This is the real thing right now. We're going. 1,000.
1,040.
2,040.
2,040.
2,040.
2,070. 3,070. 3,090. 4,090. 5,100.
Okay, something just happened. I'm not sure what that was. Now, I assume you guys are all highly educated people out here. Let's try that again because I heard about 3 or 4 different answers. Let's try that again. So here we go.
1,000.
1,040. 2,040. 2,070. 3,070. 3,090. 4,090. 5,000.
4,100.
4,100.
All right, go ahead and mute yourselves real quick now. So once again, I heard 3 or 4 different answers. So it's 4,100, and I heard a lot of you say 5,000. I want those of you who said 5,000 to know, number one, we don't know who you are, so you're safe. And I also want you to know that most people do that same thing. I did it myself. I said 5,000, and most people do that. If you add the numbers together again, you'll see that you actually end up with 4,100. But it's just natural in our minds somehow to go to 5,000. So I'm sure that some of you got it right. Well, I know some of you got it right the first time. I heard the right answer the first time. But it's so easy, and I think we kind of get in that mindset. And what I've seen a lot of times in a live event is that people will add the numbers together, and they'll know in their head that it's 4,100. But when they hear everybody else say 5,000, they just switch and say, yeah, 5,000, because everybody else did. They think they might be wrong. So that happens in projects just as well as it does in this little exercise that we just had. Just as much as people will go through and they'll think that they've done it right, they'll in their head, boy, they've got it down, they've got it figured out. But the reality is they don't. The reality is that they don't have it right the first time. And one of the things in projects, and we're not going to get into this piece too much today, but when I have a class I teach at SCC that's an all-day class, and when we get into that class, we talk about how important it is to listen to the people that might have a little contrary opinion, or they might have something that is different than what everybody else says. And this is a really good illustration of why you would want to do that. You're going to want to listen to the people that sometimes have a different opinion because they might be the ones that are right. I would guess that probably 80% of the people with this little math exercise probably came up with the wrong answer, just a guess. But there were 20% of you then that had the right answer that often you don't get listened to because you're not the majority. So that's just a little extra tidbit with this whole thing. So what I would like to hear, 1 or 2 of you, maybe 3 at the most, is a project that you've been involved in where a significant miscalculation took place. We've already heard one this morning where a 3-week project, I think it was, if I remember right, that's still going and going, or just a short-term project that's still going. I mentioned the project 18 at Hewlett Packard that was supposed to take 18 months, ended up taking years and years, and I'm not sure they ever completely finished it. And I'll just share one more as you're thinking about a project maybe that a miscalculation took place. I'll share one more with Hewlett Packard where they had a little employee reimbursement program application set up. And on this employee reimbursement program, somebody decided they didn't like it. So they went out and they paid a company about $1 million, not to mention the time of the staff that was involved in it, to try to bring on a program that just didn't fit. They miscalculated the value of the program that they were trying to bring in. And after about a year and a half, not only was $1 million gone, but all the employees' time was gone. A huge miscalculation, $1 million miscalculation. That takes a lot of ink to, that HP sells to pay for a mistake that size. So anybody have a project miscalculation? You don't have to tell me who it was with or anything like that, but just a basic project where a miscalculation took place that that caused maybe the project to fail, or maybe almost fail, but somehow you're able to save it? Have 2 or 3 people? Any hands up, Dana?
I don't see any so far.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll keep rolling. There are reasons that projects fail, and we're going to look at that in just a minute. And any of you want to share, maybe as the slide I have up says, in retrospect, what's one thing you do differently if you were in charge of the project? Let's give you just like 10, 13 seconds to think about that. Is there anybody that would want to share maybe how a project failed that you would do differently that you think would have helped the project? Did I scare everybody from talking with that math assignment? All right, let's keep going. I don't want to keep you waiting.
We do. We have one. We have a
Okay.
hand.
Yeah, good.
David Mueller.
David, go ahead. Are you there, David?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, now I can. Thank you.
Okay. In retrospect, one thing I do differently on some of the larger projects that I've been in charge of is not be as aggressive with the project schedule. I get excited when the project comes in and I kind of plan out a schedule of completion. I don't usually leave enough buffer space sometimes on the larger ones, and things can, excuse me, things can kind of derail when you don't allow yourself enough time for unforeseen circumstances.
Right. Boy, are we in the middle of one of those right now? I'll tell you that. A lot of projects got kind of short-circuited, I think. Anybody else, Dana, or is that it?
I think that might be it.
Okay, David, thank you for sharing. Yeah, sometimes you look back and you go, wow, we were really aggressive with that. Now we'll discuss that in just a minute as well. We'll look at a little bit in that. So what are the reasons that projects fail? And this is, we're going to really just kind of circle around one piece of this at this point. But here are the top 10 reasons that projects fail. And the number one from this particular website was inadequate project planning. So we don't take the time, we don't take the effort to fully plan the project the way that we should. Other reasons are scope creep. If you're not familiar with the term scope creep, it simply put is you start a project and then somebody has, hey, let's do this. Somebody else says, let's do this too. And the next thing you've got 500 little add-on items that just bury the project. The recent project I was involved in was scope creep. One of the folks decided that they needed something out of the software application that was never part of the original project. The software that they had selected didn't work, didn't do that one thing, and literally the whole project ground to a halt until somebody came up and said, hey, that's not part of the scope anyway. That's not part of what we're doing here. So scope creep can kill a project pretty quickly. Use of unpracticed tools and techniques, shortage of resources and requirements, no or poor risk management, lack of user engagement. Lack of user engagement is a huge one. How engaged are the people that are working on your project? Poor controlling, poor monitoring, inexperienced project managers. I think we can all say that we've felt very inexperienced, even if we're very experienced, because things change. The company we work for, or the leadership may change. So with everything changing so quickly, it becomes difficult sometimes. But today we're going to focus on project planning, on that piece. So we're going to talk about a chicken project team right now. So a couple weeks ago, we bought into all the hype. Everybody said, you know, let's raise our own birds. And so we brought home about half dozen chicks a couple weeks ago to our little antique farmhouse. Chicks are like project team members. They get overwhelmed and they flock to the furthest wall and just go stare at it. So we would stick our hand in the little brooder box, and literally they would just all run. look at one wall of the little plastic tub that we have them in right now, and just stare at that wall, just terrified. And their thought process, if I could see what they're thinking, was, if I can't see him, he can't see me. So that's kind of how we felt like they were acting. So, you know, the question, we're not going to ask you guys to share this one, but have you ever been on a project team full of baby chicks where you come in and rustle things up a little bit and immediately the team goes and hides, or at least tries to hide? There's not too many places to hide in the chicken coop, but or in this little place, but in their brooder box, but they certainly do try to. So just like so many things in our life, gaining 6 new family members is a real project. What to do with them, where to put them. It's overwhelming in a way, because, you know, this is something we've never done, and it's something that, well, here we are, we're in the middle of it now. So what I would like you to do is use the chat function, and yeah, go ahead and use the chat function, and should be some considerations you would take when taking on a half a dozen future food producers. What would you do? So, or what do you think we should consider when taking on project chicks? Go ahead and use the chat function and just send some ideas. What do we need to consider? Not everybody all at once. There we go. Set up a home space for them. Perfect. What else? Food and water supply. What is my expectation for them? Good question. Expectation is eventually they're going to lay eggs, we hope. How much overall room will you need as they grow? Good. What else do we need to consider? Spend time socializing with the chicks. Our daughter has been very adamant about that. She tells us that she wants pictures of us holding the chicks. Keeping them safe from predators, absolutely predators. Room to grow. What Becky said was good. Yep. All right, good. So those are just a few of the considerations. So we be ready to repeat what you expect of them. Okay. Yeah, that's absolutely, and that's a good one for project team is repeat your expectations. Very good. Thank you, Diane. So those are some of the things. Room to grow. You apply these to a project team, and it kind of makes a lot of sense. Room to grow. What are the predators? What are the things that are attacking? What are your expectations? Food and water supply. Well, absolutely. You know, how do you take care of them? How do you take care of your team and what they're doing? So we're gonna look at the actual definition of a project and see what that looks like, and we'll keep going. Thank you for your participation. So a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product or service. It's temporary in that it has a defined beginning and a defined end. And I believe it was Jennifer, maybe, I can't remember for sure, Jennifer, that said that they're on week 63 of a short project. Ideally, a project is temporary, and we're going to just say, here is the beginning, here is the end. Project's unique in that it's not a routine operation. So it's not something that you do every week in and out. That would be a process. A specific set of operations designed to accomplish a singular goal. And a project team often includes people who don't work together, sometimes from different organizations, sometimes across multiple geographies. So let me go back and reiterate, this is a temporary endeavor. Project is temporary in nature, and it's a unique product or service. So if you're doing the same thing over and over again, that is a process, it's not a project, and it needs to be treated a little differently. A process, the expectations are pretty well known. A project, people say 80% of your time as a project manager should be spent communicating. All right, so that is a project. So important question, are baby chicks a project? Oh, absolutely, yes, they are a project. Based on the considerations you set in, do you think planning was involved, or did we just grab a tub, buy the chicks, and throw them in the box? No, we absolutely did not. When we came to this house, it had a chicken coop that the raccoons had got into and lived in for a while. So we had to repair the roof, had to repair a floor, had to get everything fixed up, ready for them before we even brought them home. Even though they don't live out in the coop yet, we had to prepare the coop so that when they're old enough and ready to go, we can transport it to the coop. So there was a ton of planning. We spent a lot of time on YouTube. We spent a lot of time on Backyard Chicken Farmer, and we learned a lot about chickens, how to raise them, what to do. And so far we brought home 6 healthy chicks, and so far they're still healthy. So what would happen if we hadn't planned? Well, we'd have an existential, oh, that's terrible humor, but anyway, existential disaster. Thankfully, things are going good so far. So if you look at, Dana had mentioned that I'm PMI certified. Some of you know Project Management Institute. And that is, what that means is I took a really long, grueling test and have some experience, and fortunately was able to come out okay with it and ended up with certification. And according to PMI, the folks that put together the project management test and have the certification, according to them, there are 5 phases to a project. You start off with the initiation, and that initiation piece is just where people begin to plan, they begin to think about it. They say, yes, I think this is a good project to carry forward with. Then we move into the actual planning phase of a project. That's the purple half circle there. The planning phase is where now we're going to try to figure out what this looks like. We're going to decide how far we're going to go. We're going to decide what is in scope with the project. We're going to decide what is out of scope of the project. So that's very important when we're looking at a project and we're planning a project, not to only consider the things that we are doing, but it's really important to say, and these are the boundaries, these are the things we're not doing. Because I mentioned scope creep earlier. If you don't cut out that scope creep, eventually you're going to just be overwhelmed with all the things that are going in so many different directions. So part of planning is making sure that you have a focus on this is what the project is. And I think I saw one of the things was communicate, 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 or repeat, repeat, repeat was one of the things. And that's what you simply have to do. What's expected and what is expected that will not be done. And quite honestly, sometimes you have to tell leadership that. You have to share with leadership, listen, this is, I know how important this is. This is out of scope of the original project. If you want to go ahead and do this, here are the ramifications. And so we don't just say yes when, ideally, we don't just say yes when leadership comes to us with veering off of the path of the scope. Ideally, we say, here is how it will impact the project. If you're willing to pay this much more, take this much more time, then we can go that direction. So planning is the second phase. Executing is the third phase, and monitoring and controlling is the fourth. But in reality, executing and monitoring and controlling, they all happen pretty much at the same time. Because as you begin to execute the project that you have planned and initiated, then you monitor and control it at the same time. Then finally, you close the project out, and hopefully there's some kind of a celebration involved, some kind of a retrospective to look back and say what went right and what went wrong. Well, today, we're only focusing on the planning segment of it. And the tool that I'm going to provide is well, we'll get to that in just a minute. But we're going to focus just on the planning piece. And once again, inadequate project planning is the #1 reason, according to this website. Different people will tell you differently. But inadequate project planning is one of the main top 10 reasons projects fail. No doubt about it. So why does it matter? Here are just some statistics from a website that I found that's involved with projects. 17% is the number of IT projects that go so badly they actually threaten the existence of the company. 45% is the cost overruns for large IT projects. 44% is the amount of value that is never realized. So we have these high expectations of the project, and 44% of the value is gone because we didn't adequately plan. 70% is the number of organizations that experienced a large project failure in the last 12 months, where the failure the project doesn't happen. It doesn't meet what it was meant to meet. 70% of organizations have dealt with that. 78% is the number of people that feel the business is out of sync with the actual project's requirements. So you look at those and you go, wow, how do projects ever, what's going on here? And I think that project planning is the key. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and maybe some of you have seen this picture before. So what we have here is a swing. Marketing requested it this way. Sales ordered it a different way with the chain in the middle. Engineering designed it. It doesn't even get off the ground. Platt manufactured it so that you're going to swing right into the tree. And the crew modified it, not necessarily with safety in mind. And all the customer wanted was a tire swing. And now if there's another picture that's just like this with a few more pictures. And one is as Billing built it, and it's a whole amusement park. So the customer wanted the tire swing, and they got charged with a whole amusement park. So this is part of, again, why project planning is so important. Because if you don't take the time to plan, you're going to end up with something totally different than what you had anticipated, totally different than what you needed. So the planning phase, we're gonna try another exercise, and this is something I've never done before. So this is going to be a little bit interesting. But we're going to use chat to write a story, but it's going to be a one-word story. And what I mean by that is I want everybody here that's listening in to write one word in chat, and that's going to be our story. So real quick, starting right now, just type in one word and we'll read your story. Go ahead and go. All right. It's good to know y'all are awake. That's good. All right. So let's start reading the story. Okay. I'm scrolling up to read the story. Honey, Chaos, Sunshine, Fantastic, Glorious, Jump Cat, Zoom Award Wednesday, Planned Dog the Puppy. That was Planned Dog the Puppy. The food business, Cool Cat planning finished. Okay, great story. I don't think we're going to make any money in the publishing business, but maybe we can try. So what happened here, the whole reason for this little silly exercise for writing the story, it's all about planning. It's all about planning. If we had taken the time to plan and I had said, okay, Becky, I want you to write this word and to think about this concept, Jennifer. See, we didn't even have a theme. We didn't have any kind of elements that would go into a good story. We just said, okay, everybody write a word, and somebody wrote chaos, I think the first couple words, and that's exactly what this turned out to be. And that's what happens in a lot of projects, because maybe we do planning, but we often forget to communicate what those plans are. Or somebody is gone one day, and when the planning happens, we don't bother to bring them back up to speed when it's time. So there are some things like that happen. And one of the major principles of project management is simply this, that you front load the time planning so that you front load the time that you take planning so that the project has a better chance of succeeding. So what happens with most projects are we jump into them, we go for it, and then we work it out as we go. Well, the reality is, as we're working it out and figuring these things out as we go, if we would have taken the time up front to spend a little more time planning, that would have translated to a quicker, smoother, better project. So I just want to really drill this in. You front load the time that you take planning so that the project has a better chance of succeeding. And if you don't front load the planning, you're going to end up with all kinds of issues down the way, things you didn't expect, things like that. So real life example. This is from a student in one of the classes I taught. I was talking on this subject, and she relayed to us that she was working at a bank at the time. The bank branch A of the bank quickly rushed through a financial software project Didn't involve anyone in the planning process that were the actual doers, the users. They just rushed it down, top down, said, here, you're going to do this, boom. And meanwhile, the branch that she worked in, branch B, saw the software. They brought in the people that were actually going to be entering the data, that were actually going to be doing the work, brought them in to look at it, to make suggestions. And they tried to do it in a bottom-up manner. So real quick, let's use this chat function again and type in A or B for the project that you think succeeded, the bank that you think succeeded. Did branch A work where they quickly rushed it from the top, or did B? Absolutely, getting a lot of Bs. Absolutely, yep. So I'm not sure who QG is, but that's all right. But yeah, but B is it. That branch successfully did it because they took the time to plan. They took the time to bring in people to help speak into the project as it rolled out. I think a big mistake a lot of companies make is the top management says, okay, here's the project that you have to do. You've got a budget of $5,000, go do it, or 20,000, or $1 million, or 10 million, whatever the case might be, go do it. And what should truly happen in a project is the leadership goes, here is the objective, here's what we need to do. Now, as a project manager, your job is to get me a realistic estimate for how much this is going to cost. Boy, I don't know a lot of organizations that do that, but the organizations that do that, they have a much better handle on it. Let me give you an example of what can happen when the top down says, the top says, okay, here's $10,000, go take this project and make it happen. Well, if you're the project team, you're going to spend every bit of that $10,000 and probably more. Now, if I come back and say as a leader, here's the project, here's the objective that we want to do, get me the estimates, find out what this is going to cost. As a project manager, you're going to find ways to make it even cheaper if you can. So you may end up being, companies may end up throwing money away because they mandate how much the project is going to cost. So ideally, in an ideal world, if you're the doer, if you're the person doing it, you're going to be able to say, I think it'll take me this many hours, which will cost this much money, the parts will cost this much. And you take that and you backfill it, and then you have a more realistic project budget. And sometimes it can save money. But that's all part of the planning, and that's part of this real life example, the tale of two branch banks. And how that will work. I think if we open up the mics, I'm not going to at this point, we're getting actually close on time, but I think if we open up the mics, I would hear a lot of you echo this. So what's an important tool? Now, some of you that have been involved in projects, you're very familiar with what I'm going to talk about. But it's important to know that you can never build a skyscraper by only looking at what is visible from the outside. If you see a house or a chicken coop, for example, you can't build it just by looking at what is visible from the outside. You have to think about the foundation. You have to think about, do we go to bedrock? What do we do? The same is true with the project. You can never just plan a project by thinking only about the big picture and looking at the outside. You have to dive down into the details, and you have to break it down into manageable chunks that are digestible, that are tasks. So this is an age-old tool called the work breakdown structure. Many of you are probably very familiar with it, and I've brought my chicks in to help with this project. So work breakdown structure looks like an organizational chart. And again, this is probably review for many of you, but hopefully it's helpful again. At the very top of your chart, you've got project baby chicks. Then across the top row, I've got what I call milestones. These are the big pieces, the big chunks of the project that if I look at project baby chicks and go, man, this is way too much. This is overwhelming. I can't figure it out what to do. Well, what are the smaller pieces of that? Well, I've got a plan. I need to build a temporary home. I need to build a permanent home. I need to feed and unfeed. I'm reading across the top row here. I need to feed and unfeed options. You know what unfeed means. And I need to bring home the chicks, get them at the store and bring them home, or from the farm or whatever. So now if we look down, if you look over to the left at the planning phase and go down, the planning phase first of all, we're going to determine if this is feasible. So we're going to have a meeting, my wife and I, and talk about, can we do this? Is this something? And I'll be honest, we brought home the baby chicks. The thing that pushed us over the edge is we have a lot of ticks out here. And we learned that chickens eat a lot of ticks, and we thought, we're in. So we're going to put those chickens to work. What is the outcome? Lay eggs, yes, but also take care of our tick population. So that kind of helped us determine if this is feasible. We determined the brooding box design. We determined the coop design. Figured out what we're going to do. Second column, oops, jump one there. Build a temporary home. Gather and purchase the supplies. This would be the brooder box. Prepared the room, set up the room. So you can see here that project title over at the very top. Top row is all the major milestones. Following each milestone, underneath each milestone, are all the bits and pieces, the individual tasks that we have to do to make this work. This works in a little tiny project called Bringing Home Baby Chicks. It works in huge projects that are multi-million-dollar projects. Now, you're not necessarily going to line out a multi-million-dollar project using this grid. You'll use software and things like that, but the concept is exactly the same. You have to take the time at the beginning of the project to think about what are the big chunks that I have to get done, and then break it down task by task by task. Now, a major question that often comes up is, well, how granular do you get here? For example, in the construction, do I say I need a box with 43 screws and 2 extra screws in case I break it? You can get that granular if you want to. You generally don't need to, but you can grind this thing down to whatever level you as a project manager feel comfortable with. The way I like to look at this is I like to think, if I forget this and let it fall through the cracks, will it harm the project? If yes, maybe I need to make sure that that's somewhere on my grid. Maybe I need to make sure that that is accounted for somehow. So that's kind of the way I look at this is how do I break it down? How far do I need to break it down to? And then in a bigger project, these tasks, of course, would go to different people. This just applied to us, but this would go, who is involved in construction? Who does that? Who's involved in security for the coop? You mentioned predators, coop security. So those are some of the things that you have to think about. Breaking down the projects. Again, we're front loading the planning side of things so that when we get to this point, add coop security, we're not going, oh no, what do we do? We've thought about it, we've planned for it, we've figured it out. Doesn't mean there won't be surprises along the way, doesn't mean things won't change, but it does give us a good thing to look at, to understand. These are the elements of the project that we have to have done. And of course, in a real project, we would assign a name. A little hint for you, if you're going to have a project called Do the Construction, don't assign a group. So if you're working in an LES, for example, and you're working on a project, don't assign a team to a task. Always assign an individual, always assign an individual. That individual is not necessarily going to do the work. That individual is not going to be the only person working on that task, but that person is responsible for the task. If you assign a team to one task, you're going to have too many people that are pointing fingers going, well, I thought you were going to do that. I thought you were going to do that. So reality is most projects aren't quite this uniform. It's not this linear. If you look at this slide, you'll notice that there are arrows going all over the place. And more likely than not, that's more what your project's going to look like. This subtask in the middle is going to have 2 or 3 other subtasks involved in it. So this is more what a real WBS might look like. Obviously, a lot bigger than this. So that's how the kind of the big idea of how you plan a project. You name the project, your top row, you come up with the big milestones, your key deliverables, and then under the second row, you list all the tasks that go with that milestone. Recommendation that I would have for you is that a task always starts with a verb, starts with an action. determine, decide, build, create, ask, do, because that gives people a good idea of what that task is about. If you just say wall, what is it? What is a wall? Do you look at the wall? Do you climb the wall? Do you build the wall? Do you tear down a wall? So you don't use words like that. You always start with the verb determine, decide, build, create, and so on. And then you break down that project task by task. And that way people can follow it. They can see exactly what their task is, what their need is. So the big question is there an app for that? Absolutely. Many of you are familiar with Microsoft Excel, Smartsheet. I'm a big believer in Smartsheet, and we use it a lot for some of the projects I work on. Smartsheet.com. Google Spreadsheets can be used, Trello, Basecamp. If you've ever heard of mind mapping software, there's some really good mind mapping software that can help actually build out the WBS. You can use mind mapping software for that, Google Mind Mapping. MindMeister is one of those products that does that. And you break it down task by task. So it looks like we only have 5 minutes. Dana, did we have any questions come in during this time?
Let's see. So far, no questions. If anyone does have a question, please feel free to type that into the Q&A or even through the chat feature, and we can address those quickly.
And do you have anybody, if anybody that's been in on this has an example of where upfront planning really helped, I would love to hear it. WBS stands for Work Breakdown Structure. And so some people think it's you breakdown because of the work, but no, you're actually breaking down the project into bite-sized chunks. So WBS is Work Breakdown Structure, and that's the grid. That's this grid where you just break it down chunk by chunk by chunk. Okay? Does anybody have an example? Okay, are there any suggested templates you recommend? Terry, it depends on the software you use. Like I said, I use Smartsheet a lot. It's probably better for smaller. Microsoft Project is good for huge projects, but everything has its shortcomings and so forth. But as far as templates, it's up to the project manager. The project manager has to decide, based on team interaction, team feedback, how to break down the project into those bite-sized chunks. So if you're familiar, real quick, I'll jump back to the WBS. So if you're using a spreadsheet, what you would do here is this would be all the way, the planning phase would be all the way to the left, and then you would indent, determine if feasible, and at the same level of indent, determine routing, determine coop design. So in a software like Excel or Project, or Smartsheet, you're going to indent everything that's a subtask of the heading task. And so that's kind of one of the ways that you can break down the project, even using an Excel spreadsheet. So I recommend, again, like a product like Smartsheet, recommend mind mapping software to help you think through a project. I recommend even getting a room of people and getting sticky notes, and everybody writes down what they think needs to happen in the project, what they think the tasks are. And you can then take those sticky notes and group them according to what people come up with in the room. So you come up with, okay, these all tasks, these go together to do this. These tasks go together to do this. You can use sticky notes to create your project plan. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions?
I don't show any in the Q&A feature.
Okay. I think I probably should have included an email address on my presentation here. I did not, but it's literally steve@witerations.com. It's iterations with a W in front of it. Steve@witerations, or you can contact Dana at Southeast Community if you have any questions come up. But it's the top of the hour. I know you guys need to get back to it. I appreciate the time, and I welcome any direct questions. And I hope that you felt that this is a valuable resource today. Dana?
Yeah, no, again, yeah, thank you again, Steve, for doing this for us. And we will be doing another one with Steve, I believe, in a couple weeks. Actually, yeah, so if you hopefully you have registered for that one as well, we'll be touching on a slightly different topic for next time. But yeah, thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And we hope you have a great rest of the day. And please feel free to reach out with any questions.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Dana and Luke.
You bet.